Question: DS. Is A less than B, which is less than C? Condition 1. A minus 1 is less than B, which is less than C plus 1. Condition 2. A plus 1 is less than B, which is less than C minus 1. Solution. Let us solve this DS question using the variable approach. The fifth fundamental concept in inequality. We know that negative 1 is less than 0 and 0 is less than 1, so we can write negative 1 is less than 0, which is less than 1, by the first fundamental concept in inequality. Now, when we add A to all, the inequality becomes A minus 1 is less than A plus 0, which is less than A plus 1. That is, A minus 1 is less than A, which is less than A plus 1. The third fundamental concept in inequality. The sum of two larger quantities will be greater than the sum of two smaller quantities. If A is greater than B and C is greater than D, then A plus C is greater than B plus D. The first property of inequality. Multiplying or dividing an inequality by a positive number does not change the direction of the inequality sign, which is positive rule in inequality. If A is greater than B, then A times X is greater than B times X, and A over X is greater than B over X, where X is greater than 0. Let's apply the 3 steps of the variable approach. Follow the first step of the variable approach by modifying and rechecking the original condition and the question. We are required to verify whether A is less than B, which is less than C. The answer to this question will be in terms of yes or no, and therefore we will apply CMT1 to this question. This is a 50-51 level question. That is why you should be careful when this question appears in the exam. Do not be scared. Follow the second and the third steps. From the original condition, we have 3 variables, A, B, and C. To match the number of variables with the number of equations, we need 3 equations. Since conditions 1 and 2 will provide 1 equation each, E would most likely be the answer. Recall 3 principles and choose E as the most likely answer. Taking both conditions together, we get A minus 1 is less than B, which is less than C plus 1 from condition 1, and A plus 1 is less than B, which is less than C minus 1 from condition 2. Adding both the inequalities, we get whole of A plus 1 plus whole of A minus 1 is less than B plus B, which is less than whole of C minus 1 plus whole of C plus 1 by the third fundamental concept in inequality. That is, 2 times A is less than 2 times B, which is less than 2 times C. Dividing this inequality by 2, we get A is less than B, which is less than C, by the first property of inequality, which is positive rule in inequality. The answer is unique yes, so the conditions combined are sufficient as per CMT1, which states that the answer will be in terms of a unique yes or no. Thus, C seems to be the answer. However, since this question is an inequality question, which is also one of the key questions, also by tip 4, the trivial condition usually is not the answer. That is, C is not the answer. We should apply CMT4A, which states that if answer C is found too easily, either A or B should be considered as an answer. Let us take a look at each condition. Condition 1 tells us that A minus 1 is less than B, which is less than C plus 1. Now, A minus 1 is less than A and C plus 1 is greater than C, so we cannot find a straight relationship between A, B, and C. For example, if A equal to 1, B equal to 2, and C equal to 3, which satisfies A minus 1 equal to 1 minus 1, that is less than B equal to 2, which is less than C plus 1, that equals to 3 plus 1, or 0 is less than 2, which is less than 4, we get 1 is less than 2, which is less than 3, and thus the answer to the question is A less than B, which is less than C, is yes. However, if we take A equal to B, that equals to C, which equals to 1, which satisfies A minus 1 equal to 1 minus 1, that is less than B, that equals to 1, which is less than C plus 1, that equal to 1 plus 1, or 0 is less than 1, which is less than 2. Clearly, A is not less than B, which is not less than C, as A equal to B, which equal to C, which equals to 1. And thus, the answer to the question, is A less than B, which is less than C, is no. CMT1 says that if a condition gives us both yes and no as answers, the condition is not sufficient. Condition 2 tells us that A plus 1 is less than B, which is less than C minus 1. Now, A is less than A plus 1 and C minus 1 is less than C, so we get A is less than A plus 1, which is less than B, which is less than C minus 1, which is less than C, by the fifth fundamental concept in inequality. Using the first fundamental concept in inequality, we can write A is less than B, which is less than C. The answer is unique yes, so the condition is sufficient according to CMT1, which states that the answer must be in terms of a unique yes or no. If the question has both C and B as its answers, then B is the answer rather than C by the definition of DS questions. Also, this question is a 50/51 level question and can be solved by using the variable approach and the relationship between common mistake type 3 and 4, A or B. Condition 2 alone is sufficient. Thus, B is the correct answer. Answer B.